Next man up, 102.5 The Game. Jake Lyman, Parker Kelly with you on this Reaction Monday, brought to you by Pella Windows and Doors of Nashville. We are broadcasting live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. It is great to be back in Nashville, so don't have to deal with technical difficulties like I had on Thursday. So we are on the air. We're sounding good. We are ready to roll. Parker, what's going on?
Sorry, I can't hear you out of my ear, but yeah, no, it's good to have you back. Kind of, we had a little bit of technical difficulties last week. Hopefully, those are behind us, and we're all back together, and lots to talk about.
It's great to be able to come into the studio and know everything's going to work, except for apparently you being able to hear me. Excited for a fun show today. The Final Four is set. We will talk college basketball. We'll get into the Preds. Tough weekend for the Nashville Predators as they continue to fight for a playoff spot now with just 8 games to go. We'll also get into the Tennessee Titans, a new 7-round mock draft from ESPN, and we will talk about all of that throughout the show today. But we have to start with the game of the day yesterday, the game of the weekend, maybe the game of the tournament, UConn and Duke yesterday. After 3 Elite Eight games that left a lot to be desired, I would say. The games on Saturday were okay. Illinois pulled away from Iowa down the stretch. Same thing with Arizona and Purdue after it was a game that was, it was relatively competitive early on. And then, of course, Michigan, Tennessee, which we'll get into in a second. But we got the one that saved the weekend, UConn and Duke. The Huskies come back from down 17 early in that second half and come all the way back. Caden Boozer turns it over, and Braylon Mullins from 40 feet on the logo drills it, and UConn is going back to the Final Four for the third time in the last 4 years. What a game, and I have no idea what Duke was thinking in that moment, in the final 10 seconds. There's 10 seconds left in the game, so you do not have to get the ball across half court. Even if you get called for a 10-second violation, the time is going to run out on the game. You did not have to get it across half court. You do not have to advance the basketball. Once you get it into a hand of a shooter, you get fouled. Hold on to the ball and go make your free throws. I know it was a 1-and-1. But I would much rather have taken that chance that maybe you missed the front end and UConn has to go the length of the floor in the final 8.5, 9 seconds than throw the ball around, which leads to the turnover. UConn hits the 3 and wins it. I don't know what Duke was thinking in that moment. You can see John Shire on the sideline. There are moments where he looks like he's saying, hold it. There are moments where it looks like he's saying, pass it. Either way, poorly coached in that moment, and UConn takes advantage, hits the 3 with 0.3 seconds left, and ends up winning the game 73-72. A great game, but a totally avoidable situation from Duke down the stretch.
Yeah, and it's kind of shocking because Duke is one of the better coach teams in the country, and a rare freshman mistake from Caden Boozer, who played well in place of Caleb Foster, at least early on in the NCAA tournament. I don't know what he was thinking. Just have to hold on, get fouled, and that seals the deal. But you turn the ball over. The crazy part about all this was I was texting with some buddies who are Duke fans in the first half. I thought it was over. I thought Duke had that thing won, 19-point lead. UConn was 1 of 18 from 3-point range to start the game, and they made their final 4 out of 5 to win it. Just unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean, it looked like we were going to get a complete dud of a weekend when it came to the Elite Eight games. Now, some of the Sweet 16 games were really good. I mean, that Duke St. John's game lived up to the hype. Sadly, Arkansas, Arizona didn't live up to my expectations as the Razorbacks, who at times during this run in March couldn't miss from 3. They couldn't hit water if they fell off a boat against that Arizona team, especially early on. So the Sweet 16 had some games that lived up to the hype. But overall, I think it was a disappointing weekend until that shot went down from Mullins to send UConn back to the Final Four. And now the Final Four is set. We're going to get UConn and Michigan and Arizona on one side of the bracket, UConn and Illinois on the other side. And we'll get more into these matchups later in the show, Parker, but I do think Michigan-Arizona is your de facto national championship game. Those are the 2 best teams in the country. you play the games for a reason. Whoever wins that game is going to have to go play 40 more minutes against either UConn or Illinois to win a title. But I do think we are going to get the two best teams playing each other on Saturday night in Michigan and Arizona.
Yeah, I think in terms of UConn had a legit chance to get that final one seed, so it at least makes sense that they're here at this point in time. I think if you're Illinois, you're kind of just happy to be along for the ride. I don't think Illinois is among the top, elite teams in college basketball, but they're here for the first time since I think 2005. But you're right, Michigan and Arizona, it is the de facto national championship game. And say what you want. I know that Duke beat Michigan when they played in DC in February, but in terms of quad one wins, these two teams have been the best really since November started. They've just been bludgeoning teams. So I'm happy that they're meeting in the Final Four. I wish that they were on opposite sides and can meet in the national championship game, but Saturday is going to be really, really fun.
Yeah, I think Saturday is going to be good. I think Illinois and UConn will be a good game. I think I'd take the Huskies, but I think it'll be a good game. But you're right, Michigan, Arizona, that is the marquee matchup in the Final Four up in Indianapolis to head to the national championship game. I will say we are accused often of being SEC homers on this program. Our conversation has been a lot when it comes to football, when it comes to basketball, is that the top end talent is about equal when it comes to the Big Ten and the SEC, especially in football, but the depth is better from the SEC. And I, I'm not completely saying that the Big Ten is ahead of the SEC overall, but I will say this has been a rough year if you're an SEC homer to try and back up your claims when you look at football and you look at basketball. Tennessee was the final SEC team remaining, and they end up losing by 30 to Michigan yesterday, and we'll talk about that game coming up in the next segment. But the Big Ten has two in the Final Four. The Big Ten has now won 3 straight national championships in football. I still think overall, when you look at the totality of all sports and up and down the entire league, I do think the SEC is the best athletic conference in the country. But the Big Ten is definitely making it a lot tougher to back up those claims this year with the way that they've performed, especially in the postseason of both the college football playoff and now in the NCAA tournament.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, what the SEC did last year, it was kind of flipped with the Big Ten this year. Now, I don't think it's going to be a long time before a conference gets 14 teams into the field again. But the SEC still had the most this year. But in terms of what happened in the Elite Eight, the Big Ten had half the field, and now they have half the field in the Final Four, which is exactly what the SEC did last year. So, in terms of the top end, I mean, it's pretty obvious right now that the Big Ten has the leg up, at least for this season, on the SEC. The SEC probably had the greatest single season in history last year,
Right.
but for right now, it's pretty fair to say that it's the Big Ten.
No, I think it's going to go back and forth over the next few years, but I think this year and if Dr. Locke is listening, he's probably very
He
pleased
will
with
call in at
because
some point.
this is the conversation that always perks his ears up because he's a Big Ten guy, and I will say it's been a tough year for the SEC in terms of the postseason, the way that they've performed in both football and men's basketball. 615-737-1025 is the phone number. If you want to text or call, our phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Coming up at 9:30, we will be joined by the Vanderbilt men's golf coach, Scott Limbaugh, as they prepare to host the Mason Rudolph Championship out at Vanderbilt Legends Club this weekend. So excited to speak with him. But coming up next, we will get into Tennessee's weekend. I did say Tennessee's ceiling was the Sweet 16, and they surpassed that. So I will eat some crow on that. But Tennessee didn't exactly back themselves up yesterday with the way they performed against Michigan. We will talk Vols getting to their third straight Elite Eight, but falling short once again of a Final Four coming up next. We are off and running on this Reaction Monday. Jake Lyman, Parker Kelly, next man up, 102.5 The Game. Next man up, 1025, the game. Jake Lyman, Parker Kelly with you. Final four set in the NCAA tournament. Illinois, UConn, Arizona, Michigan heading up to Indianapolis for games on Saturday. Our coverage of the NCAA men's basketball tournament is presented by Toyota, Nelson's Greenbrier Distillery, Maple Street Biscuit Company, Thompson Machinery, and Pizzona MD. We are going to talk about Tennessee's loss to Michigan yesterday, but first, let's go to our phone lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Bruce is called in. Bruce, thanks for calling. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Doing great.
Good. You made a comment that in the totality of all sports, the SEC still has an advantage over the Big Ten. My assumption is I think you're thinking about baseball. And of course, there's no doubt in baseball, the SEC is significantly superior to every other conference, including the Big Ten. However, you said the totality of all sports. When you look at all sports, quite frankly, it's not close. Penn State just won their 5th straight national championship in wrestling, and they've won 13 of the last 16. Men's and women's volleyball, over half the teams in the tournament were Big Ten teams, over double the SEC. Men's and women's hockey championships are going on right now. Half the tournament are Big Ten schools. There's none from the SEC. So I think when you really look at the totality of all sports, I'm not sure you're right.
No, and that's a fair point. I was not thinking about some of the non-revenue Olympic sports. I was more thinking of when you add women's basketball and baseball and softball and some of the sports that you see on TV more often. But yes, you are right. Wrestling is dominated by the Big Ten. Volleyball dominated by the Big Ten.
Does the SEC even have wrestling?
No, not that I know of.
Yeah.
SEC doesn't have hockey either. But like, I understand what you're saying. That yes, if you go down all the list, there might be. It probably is closer, but I think it goes sport by sport, right? Like, if we want to add track and swimming and all, like, I'm sure that there's a different way. I was looking more at the 5 or 6 major sports, but I appreciate the call, Bruce. It's a good point to include wrestling and some of those other sports that the Big Ten does dominate. I do think overall, when you look at athletic departments and the success that they have, I think the SEC is better. And I think it's more been a down couple of years football-wise, where you haven't won a national championship. Eventually, that's going to swing back in the other direction, I believe. So I would still take the SEC in the long term, but I think right now you have to look at this season and the way things have gone this year, and the Big Ten has the leg up with how they've performed on the football field and on the hardwood, with 2 teams in the Final Four, none from the SEC. And one of those teams in the Final Four, Michigan, man, they were good yesterday. I mean, Tennessee did not play well, but I do want to say I don't know if anybody in the country could have beaten Michigan yesterday the way that they were playing. Tennessee didn't shoot the ball all that well. It hurt that Akpara picked up 3 fouls in the first, 11 minutes of that game, and you having to play without him for the remainder of that first half. You saw immediately things shifted. It was not at that point, but it was 14-12 Tennessee at one point. And then I want to say Michigan went on like a 20-2 run after that, and it really spiraled from there. So Tennessee, they hung in there. I don't think anyone really expected to see Tennessee in the Elite Eight, including myself. I said I thought their ceiling was the Sweet 16, and we've had the texter Ricky who said that he would be back, and I don't know if he's listening, but Ricky has said that he wanted to come after me for saying their ceiling was the Sweet 16 and that Vandy's was the Elite Eight. I'll take it. I don't think a lot of people around here, even Vols fans, like Parker, you said you thought Tennessee's ceiling was a Sweet 16. They exceeded expectations, and credit needs to go to Rick Barnes. Iowa State, of course, was not at 100% when Tennessee beat them on Friday night, but that shouldn't take anything away from what is another really impressive run for Rick Barnes to get back to a 3rd straight Elite Eight. But clearly they were outmatched against Michigan yesterday. The Wolverines are clearly a national championship contender, and Tennessee did not play their best basketball, and you can't compete with a team like that if you're not playing your A game.
Yeah, I don't think I have a lot of thoughts. If Rick Barnes never gets to a Final Four at Tennessee, that will not change how I feel about him. He's a to me, in my mind, first ballot Hall of Famer, and it should already be there. In terms of the game yesterday, it was very frustrating because yeah, Tennessee did exceed expectations. And I think a win for this team specifically was getting to that Sweet 16. And it's kind of the cherry on top that you were able to get to the Elite Eight. But we all knew that it would take a miracle to beat Michigan. What was frustrating about this was Tennessee was in it for the first 10 minutes of the game. They were matching Michigan's physicality. Ade Mara got two early fouls called on him. Felix Okpara had 2 early fouls on him. So it didn't really – there were calls made on both sides, and I would hate to be an official in that game. But when things really started to change was Tennessee shot 24% from the field in the first half, shot 21% from 3 in the first half, and gave up a 21-0 run. You already have to play pretty much perfect to beat Michigan and hope that you get a down game from them. But when you spot them a 21-0 run, it's game over.
Right. And that end of the first half was where things spiraled. And I think once you got in that hole, it was really tough to even start to dig your way out with the way that Michigan plays. And I don't know if many Tennessee fans went into that game expecting to have a shot. Like, there is a little bit of haves and have-nots when it came to college basketball this year. And we did see some upsets. Florida went down, but I think you could see, based on how they played down the stretch into the SEC tournament, that the Gators weren't playing their best basketball. Yesterday, Duke was banged up, and they still were up big in that game before they let it slip away. But the 1 seeds had been at another level pretty much all year. And I think Arizona and Michigan have been the 2 most consistent out of that group as well. So those 2 teams, they played really well all the way through the tournament. Maybe a couple of scares here and there. Arizona struggled a little early on with Purdue. Michigan had a back and forth game with Alabama early on in the Sweet 16. But again, I don't know if there's any team in the country that could have beaten that Michigan team yesterday with the way that they played. Tennessee, at least in my mind, not as a Tennessee fan, I think this is a successful season again. Yeah, I know that you feel like you keep falling short of finally getting to the Final Four. 3 straight Elite Eights. I know that Tennessee wants to push through and finally get to that final weekend of the tournament. But with the expectations this year, with the talent you lost and the experience you lost with Ziegler and Meshack and more from that last year's team that was on both of the Elite Eight squads from the last 2 years, no one expected you to get back. And being able to do that, again, yes, you fall short, but I don't think you should be disappointed in the way this team performed, given what the expectations were throughout the season.
Yeah, no, expectations for a team that, you lose Zakai Ziegler, you lose Jemai Meshack, you lose Igor Milicic, who was a great scorer for you. That's a lot to replace. And he assembled this team a lot from the transfer portal, and you did have some freshmen that contributed big minutes. But at the same time, you look at the trend. Tennessee's been to the Elite Eight 4 times. In 2010, you lose to Michigan State by 1, 70-69. In 24, which I think was Tennessee's best chance to get to the Final Four, you run into Zach Edey and Purdue, and that was the Dalton Connect team. That team, Tennessee had a 10-point lead on Purdue, but gave it up. Purdue won that one 72-66, so a 6-point advantage for Purdue. Then last year against Houston, 69-50. This year, 95-62. So the trend keeps going in an opposite direction. The losses get worse and worse in the Elite Eight. I think Tennessee's best chance to get to the Final Four was with Dalton Connect. So pretty tough to see.
I would agree with you because you had the foundation around Dalton Connect and had the superstar. And that is a formula that I feel like works in college basketball. You have to have a go-to guy who's going to draw the attention of the defense, but he can't be your only option. You've got to have pieces around him. And you had that with Dalton Connect and Zakai Ziegler and Jemai Meshack. And I'm blanking on another key part of that team.
Chaz Lanier?
Yeah, Chaz Lanier was on that team too, and he ended up being the kind of star last season. I really do think that this year you look at the Elite Eight as a huge triumph if you're a Tennessee fan.
Huge.
Rather than the last 2 years where maybe the Elite Eight felt like a disappointment because you couldn't break through. Expectations should change the way you feel about the results. And I think for Tennessee, you look and you say, the last 2 years, you felt like you just missed out on a chance to get to the Final Four. This year, yes, you ended your season in the same way, but it should have a different connotation around it because you were a 6 seed. You upset a 3 in Virginia and a 2 in Iowa State to get there. You made a run. And I think that's more than you expected heading into the tournament, where you weren't expected to get out of the first weekend. You not only did that, you got back to the Elite Eight. I think for Tennessee, although it has to be disappointing in the moment, right? You wake up yesterday as a Tennessee fan and you do think we've got a chance to finally get to the Final Four today. Disappointing in the moment, but I think you look back in the totality of it, this is a really successful season for Rick Barnes that shows that even in a quote unquote down year, he can still make that run and get Tennessee into the conversation.
No doubt. And you got to remember, too, where Tennessee was before Rick Barnes. Basketball was pretty much irrelevant. You know, you had some good moments. Bruce Pearl led you to an Elite Eight in 2010, but it's basketball at Tennessee has not been what it is now. And Coach K had a trip to the Elite Eight 3 times in a row 25 years ago. Outside of that, list is pretty small. And
Right.
Rick Barnes is part of that list. So while Tennessee may not be a traditional blue blood, that orange is starting to become a lot bluer nowadays. So I think, again, I'll say it, Rick Barnes confirmed yesterday that he will be back at Tennessee next season. But the day that Rick Barnes decides to retire, I think he's elevated this program so much that it is going to be a destination job for whoever follows.
I agree. And I think if he does come back, Tennessee has clearly proven that they're going to be in the national conversation every single year. The question becomes, do they finally break through? And this is going to be an important offseason for this team. Nate Ament likely going to the draft, so you're going to have to go find another elite scorer. And this is going to be a fun couple of months as Tennessee tries to retool heading into 2026. 615-737-1025 is the phone number. If you want to text or call, our phone line's driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. We'll talk more basketball throughout the show. Tee it up with us at the 5th annual 615 Open, May 28th at Hermitage Golf Course. We are once again supporting Folds of Honor to help them fund life-changing scholarships for families of America's fallen heroes. Register now to play or sponsor at 615open.com. Coming up next, we will speak with the head coach of Vanderbilt's men's golf team, who is getting ready for their home tournament this Friday through Sunday, the Mason Rudolph Championship at Vanderbilt Legends Club in Franklin. We will talk to Scott Limbaugh coming up on the other side. Jake Lyman, Parker Kelly, next man up, 102.5 The Game. Next man up, 1025, The Game. Jake Lyman, Parker Kelly with you on your Monday morning, and we are now thrilled to be joined on our phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, by the head coach of Vanderbilt men's golf, Scott Limbaugh, as his team prepares to host the Mason Rudolph Championship this weekend at Vanderbilt's Legends Club. Coach Limbaugh, thanks so much for taking some time. How you doing this morning?
Man, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on this morning. I'm excited to talk with you guys.
Very excited to have you on. Excited for the Mason Rudolph Championship this weekend. Always a great event. What's the excitement level among your program? I know you only get one opportunity per season to play at home. So what's the excitement level to showcase your talent, showcase that great facility you have down in Franklin?
You know what? It's probably, I've had a lot of former players tell me it's the best week of the year, because every other sport plays and, you play home, then you play away, then you come back home. But for us, we're one of the few SEC schools that host a tournament every year. And I just think it's important to give back to the game and give back to our community. And we are thrilled to have such a talented field coming in to Legends Club this weekend. And, you look at it, we got 6 SEC teams. We got 5 of the top 20 teams in the country coming in town. And truly, the several players that are the future of the PGA Tour will be here. So I think it's a great opportunity for our young team to play against a great field at home.
And a great opportunity, I would assume, as a measuring stick with SEC teams coming in, top 20 teams. You've got a couple of weeks until the SEC championships. How do you feel like your team is playing as you try and gear up for the postseason?
Well, that's a great point. We've always, during my time here, we've always kind of separated fall to spring and then championship season. So it's these 3 different seasons, and you're just always climbing, always learning. And this last event, we started 3 freshmen, a sophomore, and our leader, Wells, and our senior, Wells Williams. And we, to be honest, we had a great fall and probably a little bit ahead of maybe where we, I don't know that we played above what we are. We won 3 times in the fall, finished the fall ranked 2nd or 3rd in the country, started the spring strong, and then we struggled down in Cabo at a huge tournament, and then kind of building our way back up. Confidence is so important in any sport, and especially in the game of golf. And so we've got some young guys that we just got to make sure they're taking the proper steps, mentally, to get ready for these last 2 regular season events, so we can be ready at the SEC championship in late April.
We're talking to Vandy golf coach Scott Limbaugh. Scott, I'm just going through kind of your schedule, and I see lots of, first place, top 3 finishes, and you have a little bit of a while before the postseason starts. But where would you assess where your team is at this point in time?
Well, that's a great question. I think that what we're trying to do is build a system around our young guys that we get them to where they can play more freely during championship season. Our coaching staff spends a lot of time with kind of what the outside person might see is we kind of caddy for our freshmen during these events during the regular season. So just helping to understand their game, seeing what they're thinking, how they're going about it. But as far as a team, I'm super excited. I mean, the only thing that we have that I would say we don't have as much senior leadership, upper class leadership, but you look at, I'm a coach. And so I look at all these different sports. As long as we can our talent level is there. And I think the challenge is for us is just to get our mental, I call it mental toughness, to be where it needs to be, where we're just playing golf and playing freely. I think that's what my coaching staff is charged to do, is train these guys up and help them to play freely. It's not going to be comfortable, but we're trying to train them to where they enjoy that.
Okay, I'm about to be super vulnerable with the entire city of Nashville. And since you're a coach, I'm going to ask for your advice on the air, because I like to golf. That doesn't mean that I'm good, but I like to golf. I am pretty good, I'd say, with the iron, but when it comes to driving, I am terrible. Do you think that you could diagnose and kind of help me fix that on the air right now?
Well, I would say first of all, the ball's sitting on a tee when you're hitting a driver. So it's sitting on the ground when you're hitting an iron. So therefore, when it's on the ground, we kind of got to go down and get it. When it's on the tee, it's kind of like if you ever played baseball or t-ball, you kind of got to swing up at it a little bit. So my guess is you might need to get a little weight on your back foot and swing up, baby, swing for the fences.
All right, I'm going to try that, and I'll let you know how it goes. I'll get back with you.
Yeah, please do.
I love it.
We can help you down here too if you want to come see us.
Yeah, Parker might have to make an appointment down there.
I don't think I'm ready for the big time yet. So
get some legitimate swing tips. Talking with head coach Scott Limbaugh, Vanderbilt men's golf. Again, they host the Mason Rudolph Championship down at Vanderbilt Legends Club Friday, Saturday, Sunday this weekend. Coach, you mentioned Wells Williams, and I know he's been a huge part of this program for the last 4 years. He won this tournament a year ago. How valuable has he been to your team, especially when you have lost some experience? Gordon Sargent, Jackson Van Paris, some of the players over the past few years. How valuable has Wells Williams been as a leader and a player for you over the last year or so?
Well, you know what, Jake, I tell you what, you mentioned Gordon Sargent, who's currently on the PGA Tour, Jackson Van Paris, currently top 20 on the Korn Ferry Tour. So trying to replace that's not real possible, So what Wells has done is he especially in this kind of world we're in now of I'm not getting playing time, let me go find grass greener. Wells was here on a really, really good team his first year, probably the best team we've ever had here, and actually played really well. But he didn't play in our postseason lineup, and he didn't complain, he didn't whine, he didn't go search for greener pastures. He just kept getting better and getting better, and so. Wells has run over the next couple of years. He's run all the races with our team. He's had great success at national championships, SEC championships. And I think he's comfortable, being in that. Now he's not a really loud guy. He's not necessarily he's just a good old country boy from West Point, Mississippi that just, he works his craft every day, and he leads by kind of showing the way. And he is a special young person, and he's currently ranked 5th in PGA Tour U, and I think 7th or 8th, I believe, in our college golf rankings. So he's our next guy in line to kind of continue getting out there, that you'll be watching on TV on Saturdays and Sundays.
Yeah, and you've talked about some of the players that you've been able to coach that are now playing at the highest level of golf. Gordon Sargent, of course, is an up-and-comer coming out of Vanderbilt just last year. I know you coached Justin Thomas when he was at Alabama. How rewarding is it for you as a coach when you do get the opportunity to sit down and watch the PGA Tour and see these guys that you've been able to mentor succeeding at the highest level?
It's so fun, and it's so rewarding. I think we had, maybe 6 guys in the Korn Ferry event this weekend, from Will Gordon, down to our more recent guys, and Jackson Van Paris, Cole Sherwood, Matthew Riedel, Theo, lots of guys that are they're right there on the cusp of breaking through to the PGA Tour. And I think that is fun. I mean, Justin Thomas, to this day, he and I have remained, super close, and just to watch his success, and kind of, it's fun for me to see him just coming back from injury to play so well at the Players a few weeks ago. So that's just, and Bud Cauley as well, coached him at Alabama during my 5 years there. And that is so much fun. But, professional golf's different than college golf, and just like, pro in anything's a lot different, but, their lives here are kind of laid out for them. And then you kind of leave here and you're on your own, every decision you make all day, every day. And I think that transition is tough. So you do have to love the game, not just be good at it. You got to love that journey, because, man, it's tough.
Coach, really appreciate you taking some time with us this morning. Wishing you the best of luck this season, and can't wait for the Mason Rudolph this weekend down at Vanderbilt Legends Club in Franklin. It starts on Friday. Should be a great event, and we're looking forward to it.
Thanks, guys.
Head coach Scott Limbaugh, Vanderbilt's men's golf team, joining us on the program again. They host their tournament coming up Friday, Saturday, Sunday this weekend down at Vanderbilt Legends Club in Franklin, and then get ready for the postseason. SEC championships coming up in late April, national championships in May. We will step aside. When we come back, we will wrap up hour number 1. Another Vanderbilt coach got an extension this weekend, which is very important. Mark Byington sticking around on West End. We'll talk about it coming up next. Jake Lyman, Parker Kelly, next man up, 102.5 The Game. "1025 The Game and Team Boxing League have your chance to win a pair of VIP tickets as Nashville Smash takes on Phoenix Fury at Municipal Auditorium on Friday, April 17th. Just text the word FIGHT, F-I-G-H-T, to the game text line at 615-737-1025 to enter to win. Jake Lyman, Parker Kelly, next man up, 1025 The Game. Big thanks to Vanderbilt men's golf coach Scott Limbaugh for joining us in the last segment. It is a big weekend for Vandy Golf, playing the Mason Rudolph Championship down in Franklin at Vanderbilt Legends Club. And that is, I've been down there. I actually broadcast the tournament 2 years ago, and it is a gorgeous course down there with great facilities. So if you want to head out there, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Mason Rudolph Championships, lots of talented teams going to be in attendance. But it was a big weekend for Vanderbilt athletics, even with the disappointing loss for the women's basketball team on Friday. Tough one against Notre Dame. But baseball took care of business. 3 straight walk-off wins against Tennessee to get a much-needed sweep after dropping 3 in a row to Mississippi State last weekend. And the biggest news for Vanderbilt athletics over the weekend, Mark Byington has signed a long-term extension to stay on West End. And his name had been floated out there for the North Carolina job, some other jobs out there that maybe would have been seen as a step up. But I think, Parker, the big news that we've seen the last couple of years with Vanderbilt, whether this is, Shea Ralph having success on the women's side, whether it's Clark Lee in football, and I know he was courted by a couple of schools during the season and into the offseason with the coaching carousel, and he was a name of interest with all the success he's had here at Vanderbilt over the last 2 years. And, of course, Mark Byington, with what he's been able to do in just 2 years, removed from a 9-win season, Jerry Stackhouse getting fired, Mark Byington takes them back to the tournament next year, and then the year after that, they're able to go and be a 5 seed and reach the round of 32. So I think with Mark Byington, getting to bring him back and keep him here on West End is just absolutely massive. And it shows you that Vanderbilt is no longer viewed as a stepping stone job. It's viewed as a spot where you can come and you can win big. And that's what Candace Story-Lee and the hires that she's made and these coaches have done. They've elevated the profile of Vanderbilt athletics to not what it was when James Franklin came in for a couple of years, won, and then took the next job at Penn State. You're now seeing that these coaches that are being brought in at Vanderbilt, they don't want to use it to leverage into the next job. They want to stay at Vanderbilt, and they're being given the resources to win at Vanderbilt.
Yeah, and I did see on social media that he had that extension on his desk, the contract laid out, and he was a little slower to sign it. But the good news is that it got signed, and with the job opening in, North Carolina and even NC State that opened up, so you had both of those jobs, high premier jobs, opened at the same time. It's huge that Mark Byington has signed to stay with Vanderbilt. And in his first 2 years, making the NCAA tournament, getting that NCAA tournament win, getting to the SEC championship game, things are trending in a good direction. And certainly the future is very bright for Mark Byington, and that shouldn't be a surprise to anyone.
Right. And it's a business, right? So if Mark Byington's getting a long-term contract extension offer from Vanderbilt and there are other jobs out there, it makes sense for him to explore and see if he can get the best deal possible, right? Like, that's just how it works. But based on the quotes, and I understand it's a quoted article from Vanderbilt, so he's going to say pretty much the same thing everybody says when they get extended. They're so happy to be here. This is home. But it does feel like Mark Byington took this job from JMU feeling as though it was for the long term. Like, I don't think he came here just to use it as another rung on the ladder to get to a North Carolina. Or, NC State in general is viewed as one of the top jobs around college basketball with the history they have there. It's not North Carolina. It's not a blue blood, but it's a good job. And I think Mark Byington wanted to be here long-term, and you see that by the extension he signed. So I think Vanderbilt athletics are in a really good spot right now with all of the coaches that you have. And that includes a guy like Scott Limbaugh that we just talked to. I know men's golf isn't exactly a revenue sport. It's not one of the big ones that you see on TV every weekend, but they have an elite coach there. Again, he coached Justin Thomas. He was very close with him at Alabama. That's kind of what allowed him to make that step up to be the head coach at Vanderbilt back in the early 2010s. And Gordon Sargent was one of the best players in the entire country for the last 2 years before he went to the PGA Tour. So that's just an example, but it's up and down the coaching rosters at Vanderbilt that you have elite coaches. Darren Ambrose with soccer just took them to the Elite Eight. You've got Shea Ralph at women's basketball, Mark Byington on the men's side, Clark Lee at football, and of course, Tim Corbin with baseball. So I think Vanderbilt athletics overall are in such a great spot, and retaining Mark Byington is just another step in showing that Vanderbilt is they're not just stepping up to be a solid athletic department. They want to be one of the best. And being able to retain your coaches shows that you are no longer somebody that the bigger programs can just pick from when they want.
Yeah, and the commitment to athletics has been what's really, stood out to me with Clark Lee, where he's been able to get this Vanderbilt team. I mean, there was a point in time I thought Clark Lee was a dead man walking, and then all of a sudden you bring in Diego Pavia and Vanderbilt football just does, upward trajectory. And You look at the women's basketball and Michaela Blakes and Aubrey Galvin, and the fact that they had a real chance going to the Elite Eight this year, but things have gotten better the last 2 years for Vandy women's basketball. Same thing with men's basketball and baseball. Have the 2 national titles under Tim Corbin. That speaks for itself. But the investment and the commitment to athletics to want to not just be a part of the SEC, but contend nationally. That's what's really impressed me since Candace Story-Lee took over as the athletic director. That's really what has stood out to me.
Yeah, the investment, the alignment of the university with athletics has been really important. But I think you made a good point about Clark Lee. And after that 2-10 season where you lose your last 10 games of the year, in this microwave society of college athletics, a lot of coaches don't get another year after that, especially because it was such a massive step back. He had taken the step forward, and they had won SEC games, beating Kentucky, beating Florida the year before. And you thought that the trend was going to continue. But the progress isn't always going to be linear, and they took a big step back in 2023, and they went 2-10. Instead of what I think a lot of athletic directors around the country would have done is, all right, let's find the next guy. Let's fire him. Let's go move on. We'll find somebody else. She stuck with Clark Lee. Clark Lee showed flexibility and said, hey, I can change the way I do things to try and improve. I'm not stubborn and set in my ways that my way is going to work, and I'm just going to keep trying. And he changed up everything. He brought in Jerry Kill. He brought in Diego Pavia and Tim Beck and said, we're going to change the way we do things. And boom, you're 10-2 2 years later. So I think you're right. There's a lot of decisions that have led to the ascension of Vanderbilt athletics. Bringing in Mark Byington, Shea Ralph, those have been huge on the hoop side. But I think retaining Clark Lee after that 10-game losing streak at the end of 2023 has been a huge part of this as well. 615-737-1025. Let's go to our phone lines. We did talk about Dr. Locke earlier on today, so should have known he was going to call in. Dr. Locke, good morning. What you got for us?
Good morning, fellas. How you doing?
Doing great.
It's fair to say that 95% of all the money generated in college sports is football. Men's basketball is slightly profitable last time I read. And then I think baseball is a little bit, it doesn't generate, but it doesn't lose a lot. And then all the other sports are pretty much just, it costs the university. So let's delve into this SEC dominance. I mean, 3 years in a row, the football natty, Big Ten, and now how many teams are left? I mean, you guys put in 15, 18 teams. I mean, how many teams are left?
There are no SEC teams left.
Oof. How many Big Ten teams are in the Final Four?
There are 2 of them.
Hey, maybe you guys will bring it home with female gymnastics, or maybe you get to. Hey, I didn't even know until you just said you guys SEC might be dominant in men's golf. Now that is something to really, really hang the hat on.
I should have known, and that's why we kind of got out in front of it this morning with talking about this, is that Dr. Locke had to come in and let us know that the Big Ten control. And to be fair, there's not a whole lot to stand on if you're looking at this past year of SEC versus Big Ten. I totally get it.
Guys, I'm going to let you go. It's just a conference of champions. It's all. I mean, you guys put out a lot of competitive little 10-win football teams that will smack around next year, and we'll continue to talk about it.
Thanks for the call, Dr. Locke.
Why did that make me laugh?
That call. Yeah, I knew that Dr. Locke was going to have to come in and rub it in. It's been a tough year when you look at things to stand on of football, men's basketball. The SEC has been one-upped by the Big Ten.
I have no problem admitting that the Big Ten has been better than the SEC the last 3 years in football.
Yeah.
And even this year in basketball. I said it. I don't have any problem admitting that.
No, me neither.
It's just the truth.
I still think long-term I'll take the SEC, but, that's, again, I don't have much that I can say over the last year.
I mean, it's just so hard to know. Going back to football, I heard this question being asked, over the next 5 years, who will have more national championships, the SEC and the Big Ten? There's no way to know because nobody expected Indiana to win it this
Right,
year.
right.
There's
And
no way to know.
who knows? Maybe there's an SEC team that nobody's looking at that ends up taking a huge step forward. I don't know, but
This
yeah,
is Texas's all-in year. So
yeah, with Arch, yeah,
this is
Arch's
their
last year,
and
yeah.
what they were able to get in the portal. This is their all-in year.
This is going, yeah, because they got Cam Coleman from Auburn too, right? Like, man,
They got Biles, linebacker from
Yeah.
Pitt, Hollywood Smothers, running back from NC
Right.
State, Raleek Brown, running back from Arizona. I mean, they're
they're
loaded,
loaded, yeah.
at least on paper.
Arch Manning's going to have to be that guy that everyone expected him to be if they're going to take that next step. But yeah, Dr. Locke did say the words Conference of Champions. Are we factoring in that maybe because the Big Ten took the Pac-12 teams, the first four, that maybe they got that Conference of Champions moniker? Is that where we are?
Oregon, traditional Big Ten team.
I know. I miss Bill Walton calling the Pac-12 the Conference of Champions every 5 seconds on his broadcast. 615-737-1025 is the phone number if you want to text or call. Our phone line's driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Tommy on the text line says, ask that clown how many SEC championships we have in the last 20 years.
Yeah, how many first-round SEC picks have there been compared to the Big Ten?
No,
That's another thing.
How many SEC championships does the
Is
Big Ten
the
have?
NFL in on this too? The SEC versus Big Ten debate?
Yeah, that's true.
They've certainly picked a side.
615-737-1025 is the phone number. When we come back, we are going to talk Titans. The NFL draft is now just over 3 weeks away. It is going to be April in 2 days, which is crazy to say, but we are about to enter draft month. And today, Matt Miller of ESPN released a 7-round mock draft. We are going to go through the Titans picks. What would we have done given the way the board fell? And do we think that Matt Miller addressed all the needs of the Titans in this mock draft? We'll talk about it coming up next. Hour number 2, Jake Lyman, Parker Kelly, next man up, 102.5 The Game. Second hour, next man up, 102.5. The Game. Jake Lyman, Parker Kelly, broadcasting live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville Studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. It is once again a Reaction Monday, brought to you by Pella Windows and Doors of Nashville. We will continue reacting to the weekend around college basketball. The Final Four is now set. Illinois, UConn, Arizona, Michigan are moving on. We'll also talk about the Preds, who had a tough weekend and are back in action on Thursday to start a massive, massive week out on the West Coast. But let's talk some Titans here. It is almost draft month. April is just 2 days away, and we have a new mock draft to react to. Matt Miller of ESPN put out a 7-round mock draft, all 257 picks. I believe that's the right number. There it is. Yeah, 257. And he starts off with, as we expect, Fernando Mendoza goes number 1. Arvell Reese, number 2 to the Jets. He has the Cardinals going with Francis Maui-Noah, the offensive tackle for Miami, which, honestly, I think puts the Titans in a great spot. At 4, you've got Jeremiah Love and David Bailey on the board. Although I would go with David Bailey in this situation, Matt Miller goes with Jeremiah Love. And I could see both scenarios playing out. It depends really on what do this front office and coaching staff value most for this team right now. Do you want to continue to load up on defense? I think taking a David Bailey or an Arvell Reese with your first pick can really make that defensive unit, the defensive line especially, one of the best in the AFC. I mean, you're going to have waves of pass rushers coming in from the interior on the outside. So if that's what the Titans value and they say, hey, we know we haven't addressed weapons enough for Cam Ward, but we've got picks on day 2. Let's go get an elite pass rusher and pair him with Big Jeff and John Franklin Myers and Jermaine Johnson and all of the backup behind him that we've got with Jacob Martin and Solomon Thomas and et cetera, et cetera. I could see that being the case. Here, Matt Miller goes with Jeremiah Love, and I get that as well, that the Titans need to make things easier for Cam Ward. One of the best ways to do it, improve your running game and also give him a good safety valve out of the backfield. So Matt Miller goes with Jeremiah Love at number 4. Your thoughts, Parker Kelly?
Yeah, no, that would be a really interesting debate if David Bailey was still on the board and then you have Jeremiah Love and, Reuben Bain's been in the conversation as well. That would really, just lots of toxicity coming from the Titans fans on what to do there. It seems like the majority of the fan base does want Jeremiah Love. And honestly, I've sung a different tune, over the last month. I think I would still go with Jeremiah Love simply because I think he's the best player in the draft. And in terms of value, if you get the best player in the draft at number 4 overall and the impact that it can have on Cam Ward, because this whole thing is centered around making sure that Cam Ward works out and that he is your franchise quarterback and that he has the ability to be a top 15, top 10 quarterback when it's all said and done in the NFL. What would help him out most is pairing him with Jeremiah Love. So that is the direction that I'm going.
I don't hate the pick at 4. I do think with David Bailey on the board, I would have gone David Bailey, but Matt Miller goes Jeremiah Love. Here's what he says. Love is a rare running back prospect with home run speed as shown by his multiple touchdown runs of more than 90 yards, and he has finishing power at 214 pounds. He's a seasoned route runner and proven pass catcher with 63 career grabs and 6 scores. The Titans checked enough boxes in free agency and by trading for Jermaine Johnson to make a luxury pick here. That's what we've been saying all along, is that running back is a luxury pick if you're going with it at number 4. But I also understand that there's not a whole lot of consensus when it comes to the top picks in this draft. Some people believe Arvell Reese is going to be this elite edge player. Others are worried about him making that positional switch. David Bailey, a lot of people like the frame, they like the production, but the bend and the mobility is an issue. Reuben Bain has the length concerns. I think all of the offensive linemen have some red flags. There's no Joe Alt left tackle in this draft. And a lot of the blue chip prospects don't play your valuable positions, whether that's Caleb Downs or Jeremiah Love or Sonny Styles. So there's not a lot of consensus your top picks could go anywhere from 2 to 12. And I don't think there would be a whole lot of discrepancy of, wow, that guy slid way too far, or that guy went way above what we expected him to. It's going to be a weird draft. And in that case, if you think that Love is the best player in the draft, I wouldn't hate it if that was the pick for the Titans. So Jeremiah Love is the pick in Matt Miller's 7-round mock draft. We will go through the rest of the Titans pick, but first let's go to our phone lines, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Adam in Portland is called in. Adam, thanks for calling. Good morning.
Hey, Jake, are you more likely, and by the way, Johnson is a rotational pass rusher, man. He is not, people act like that's solved by doing that, but are you more likely to find a starting running back or defensive end in the second round?
A starting running back.
Absolutely. So that answers your question. You're not going to find, like, you're more likely to flunk out like Femi in the second round if you try to address pass rusher then. So you need to address it at number 4 or trade back a couple of slots and address it there. But we can't afford to do Jeremiah Love right now, I don't think. I think you could find a good running back in 2026 in the second round.
See, that's why I would take David Bailey at 4. That's what I said. I would take Bailey if it was Bailey and Love, but I also understand the Love pick. I think Jermaine Johnson, I don't think he's a superstar. I'll say it that way. Like, I think he's more than a rotational pass rusher. I think he can play 3 downs for you out there. But I also don't think he's a 12-sack guy this year. I think he's probably more like a 7-sack guy, which is fine. But you need to bring in more high-end young talent on the edge. And I think if David Bailey's sitting there at 4, you take him. Here, Matt Miller goes with Jeremiah Love. We'll get into some of the other picks as well, but let's go back to the phone lines. Edward is called in. I believe Edward wants to chime in on the SEC Big Ten conversation. Edward, good morning.
Morning, guys. Hope you're doing well. This is my once-a-week call-in. Dr. Locke, I definitely would not want him to be my doctor. But what I will say, he's right. I looked at the SEC. I'm an SEC guy. I just born and raised it. This is a terrible year. I looked at the teams going into February, and I was like, there's no one that could win the national championship, except maybe Florida. And Florida, they started coming around towards the end of the regular SEC season because they had some bumps in the road. But I called in last week my rankings for the conferences at that time: Big 12, Big 10, ACC. And I know you're not going to like it, but the Big East over SEC. I look at Marquette, Villanova, St. John's, and UConn. And I'm talking about for this year. That dominance of Bruce Pearl having that great team and that big guy in the middle, what was his name? Fruit. It just wasn't there. So maybe it will come around. I'm not sure. And I'm going to stay with my comments. I know you all have to stay on topic, and I apologize for jumping in here while we're talking about the Titans. But I'm going to probably start. I think I'm going to try to make a commitment to myself to end each time I call in the Tennessee Titans problem ownership. Okay. I'll leave it at that. I've rant and raved about that for ongoing now, and I'm just not going to do it anymore. We're going to be in that same boat, I believe, this year, in coming years. Derek Mason one time said, the Tennessee Titans, and I'm talking about Derek Mason that's on the air of this station.
Yep.
The Tennessee Titans have a history of not paying for big-time receivers. And I think he's right. But anyway, enjoy your show. This is my call in for the week. Bad year for the SEC. I picked UConn to win it all the way. Just make some comments, if you don't mind, about the Big East. That conference almost died, 10, 15 years ago?
Yeah.
And look at it now. So, all right, enjoy it, guys.
Yeah, thanks for the call, Edward. No, it's a good point. I think the SEC, after having a dominant year last year in men's basketball, again, got 14 of their 16 teams into the tournament and had 2 of the Final Four and the eventual national champion. It was a big step back this year for the SEC. And again, in terms of depth, like the SEC is a better conference than the Big East. Like the eighth best team in the Big East is not as good as the eighth best team in the SEC. But you do look at the top talent in the Big East. St. John's played down to the wire with Duke, and UConn ended up beating him. So, I mean, and Duke was the number one overall seed. So you got to give props to the Big East there. In terms of the ownership thing with the Titans, I know that Amy Adams Strunk has clearly not done a very good job over the past few years. But when she had the right people below her and she empowered them to do their jobs, the Titans were pretty good for a couple of years there. When she got involved and, fired John Robinson mid-season, that's when things started to spiral. The biggest mistakes that she's made was hiring Rand Carthon and Brian Callahan. You hope that she has been able to fix those mistakes with the hires you have now. Borgonzi and Sala still have to show a lot. Sala is still not coached a game for this team. Borgonzi still has not proven that he can build the roster up. But I think on paper, you like this pairing much better than you did the previous one of Carthon and Callahan heading into 2026. 615-737-1025 is the phone number. You can text or call if you want to join the conversation. Our phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. We will continue to go through Matt Miller's 7-round mock draft on the other side. Jeremiah Love was the pick for the Titans at number 4. Matt Miller going with the running back. Does he address edge at all? We will get into it coming up next. Jake Lyman, Parker Kelly, next man up, 102.5 The Game. Next man up, 102.5 The Game, Jake Lyman. Parker Kelly with you on your Monday morning. New mock draft this morning from ESPN and Matt Miller. 7 rounds, and we're going through it. All of our football offseason coverage is brought to you by Tennessee Brewworks. Locally brewed, community-driven. Tennessee Brewworks, the official craft beer of the football offseason coverage on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Jeremiah Love, the pick at number 4 for the Titans, with David Bailey on the board, along with Reuben Bain and Carnell Tate. So lots of options for the Titans at number 4. Matt Miller has them going with Jeremiah Love. Let's look through the rest of this draft, and there's one thing that stands out. Matt Miller does not have the Titans taking a single pass rusher in this mock draft. Not at 35, not at 66, not on day 3. He has the Titans staying away from helping the pass rush, which the moves that they've made in the offseason makes pass rush a less desperate need. You still really, really, really need to add more young talent on the edge. Unless, if the Titans don't take an edge rusher at all in the draft, like Matt Miller has in here, it means that they think Femi Oladejo is going to be a Pro Bowler, which I have not seen anything that would make me think that in the 6 games that he played and all the training camp practices in the preseason. There's nothing that tells me Femi Oladejo is a future Pro Bowler on the end. So if you don't take an edge rusher in April, it probably means that you think Femi Oladejo is going to be a consistent contributor this season. And I'm not sure I believe that. Matt Miller has the Titans going guard at number 35. Chase Besantis out of Texas A&M believes that he can be a starter. Again, this mock draft is being completed under the assumption that the Titans don't make a move on the offensive line. He says with guard Kevin Zeitler a free agent and center Lloyd Cushenberry being released, the Titans need an immediate starter on the interior, which is true as of right now. I still think the Titans are going to bring back Zeitler or make some sort of move at center or right guard. So I guess with the context that we know now, maybe it would make sense to take a guard at 35, but I really do hope the Titans make a move there to make it less of a dire need on day 2 to bring in an interior offensive lineman, because I much rather would have used this pick on a wide receiver or a pass rusher.
No, 100%. I think at this point in time, they're both strong needs, but edge rusher is more of a need. And with Femi Oladejo, sure, you may be optimistic. I think this Saleh scheme will probably fit Femi a lot better than the previous because, Denard Wilson had him, doing all these different things, basically throwing spaghetti against the wall to see what stuck. But for Saleh, he said that we're going to ask Femi to put his hand to the ground and rush the passer. So I think that's going to simplify things a lot for him. But we still don't know because he's so raw. He played half of the season in college as a true edge rusher, and that was the back half of his season of his senior year at UCLA. And then he got hurt last year, so his rookie year was cut very short. So we don't know. So in terms of making me feel more comfortable and the fan base feeling more comfortable, I think it would be wise for the Titans to still take an edge rusher, because if you take Jeremiah Love at 4, then there are still good edge rushers available, but I think you can go out and get one on day 2 and still feel pretty good.
Yeah, I just look at the way the board fell in this mock draft, and we talked about it. There was another mock draft last week where all of the edge rushers and all of the wide receivers went off the board. It might have been Daniel Jeremiah's. Oh, no, it was Field Yates. Field Yates went with Keelan Rutledge, the guard out of Georgia Tech at 35. And it made a little bit more sense because Denzel Boston was off the board, and I believe Chris Bell was off the board, and R. Mason Thomas, and all of the guys that you look at and you say, maybe they're there at 35. They were all gone. Here, the Titans take Besantis 1 pick before Denzel Boston goes. 5 picks later, Jeremy Bernard gets taken. 7 picks later, Zachariah Branch. 10 picks later, TJ Parker, R. Mason Thomas, Malachi Lawrence. These are players that I think the Titans would love at 35. I would love for the Titans to get. And taking a guard, yes, in general, you have a hole on the interior of the offensive line right now. that's why I think re-signing Zeitler or bringing in somebody who you feel can be an instant starter at right guard is important. So you don't have to spend the 35th pick on a guard, and you can go out and get either another weapon for Cam Ward, or you can get that young, talented pass rusher that you've been missing that can be that missing piece along the defensive front.
Right, getting a premium position and spending an earlier pick on that. I don't know a lot about the guy that the Titans have, or that Matt Miller has going to the Titans in the
Right.
second round, but I feel like you could do a lot better than that. I feel like you could go out and get a premium position, because this is a deeper edge rusher class, and the value that you can get through the second through fourth rounds, I still think you can get a guy that could potentially be a starter for you on day 2.
Yeah, and they need a starting guard, and they need a long-term solution on the offensive line, because I look at this offensive line, and Skoronski and Latham are the only two guys that you say, all right, those are pillars. They're going to be here for a while. At least with Latham, you hope. You drafted him 7th overall. It would be very disappointing if he's not a 10-year starter for you on the offensive line. But outside of that, you've got a lot of Band-Aids going on right now. Maybe Jackson Slater ends up being a solution there. So you do need young talent on the offensive line, but this year at 35, with, like you said, this being a deep draft at edge, at wide receiver, at cornerback, I would rather use that pick there than at guard. Matt Miller does make up for it at wide receiver at 66. Chris Bell is the pick at 66, which I still don't think he falls to the 3rd round. I know the injury, but I think somebody's going to take a chance on possible 1st-round talent with Chris Bell sometime in the 2nd round. But that is the pick for the Titans at 66, which I think would be a steal if you get Chris Bell at 66. But again, with the way this draft falls, you still haven't addressed edge, and Matt Miller continues to not address edge. Getting good players. You get Kamari Ramsey at 101, safety. Bryce Betcher, the linebacker from Oregon, at 142. Nate Borkirker, I want to say that's the correct pronunciation, a tight end out of Texas A&M. Takario Davis, a cornerback out of Washington, who we talked about with TD. You get an offensive tackle later in the draft, a defensive tackle in round 7, but you don't address pass rush. And that's the one thing with this mock draft. I don't hate it in terms of the players that the Titans get. I think this would, if this ends up being the draft class, I don't think you would be disappointed with it. But I think the one thing I would change, the one thing, is swap out Basantis and put in TJ Parker at 35. And I think this might actually be a very, very good mock draft. If you come out of day 2 with Jeremiah Love, TJ Parker, and Chris Bell, I don't think it's likely, but I would feel really good about that if I'm a Titans fan with what Mike Borgonzi's able to do with those premium top 100 picks.
Well, look, I think Akeem Mesidor is going to end up getting in there in the 1st round, probably a late 1st-round pick. He would be, if he somehow slipped to the 2nd round, I would be running to the podium to go get him. But Zion Young, I imagine, will still be there. R. Mason Thomas from Oklahoma, Gabe Yakis from Illinois, all 3 of those guys would be awesome to get in the 2nd round. So I know Texas A&M had one of the better offensive lines in college football last year, certainly one of the best in the SEC. So I don't doubt that would be a good pick. But in terms of getting premium positions, the 3 guys that I just listed at edge rusher, you would love to have in the 2nd round.
Right. And I think part of it is the
Cassius Howell.
Cassius Howell, I believe, is actually gone at this point.
He's 9th on the big board on ESPN.
Maybe not, but Mesidor. Oh yes, Cassius Howell. Matt Miller has him going 22nd to the Chargers. So a lot of those top edge guys are off the board. Zion Young goes the pick before in this mock draft, but I would take R. Mason Thomas or TJ Parker over a guard. And it does go into positional value. And I know people don't like hearing positional value. Just take the right player. But you have 2 top 50 picks in this draft at 4 and 35. Going running back and guard with those 2 picks just does not feel like a sound use of resources. Like, you need high-end talent at high-end positions. You need good, young, talented receivers, good, young, talented corners, good, young, talented edge rushers. And you haven't drafted those guys in a long time. going running back and guard at 4 and 35 just does not feel like the smartest, most efficient way to use your draft capital this year. If you're going to go Love at 4, great. I think you have to go edge, wide receiver, corner on day 2 because you do need those premium positions that are harder to find. This is a good draft in day 2 for all 3 of those spots. I think you have to use your picks on those positions, especially if you take Jeremiah Love at number 4. 615-737-1025 is the phone number. If you have thoughts, you can text or call. Justin from Greenbrier says, I feel like the Titans are going to take a pass rusher with their first or second pick. They have a defensive head coach. I feel like he is going to have an opinion on players he likes. Now, I agree with that, but I do think Brian Daboll has a say on a lot of the personnel things as well. Like, you look at the additions the Titans made offensively in free agency. You brought in Wan'Dale Robinson and Daniel Bellinger and Austin Schlottman, who all spent time with Brian Daboll in New York. Mitchell Trubisky, who spent time with Brian Daboll in Buffalo. It does seem like both of these coaches, both of these former head coaches, have a strong say in the personnel decisions. Robert Saleh isn't going to, spite the offense just because he's a defensive coach. I think they're going to take the guy they believe will help the team the most. But running back and guard at 4 and 35. Positional value isn't everything, but it is something. And I don't think you can use your 2 top 50 picks on less premium positions that aren't going to help you raise the ceiling of this team. 615-737-1025 is the phone number. We will continue to talk draft throughout the rest of the hour. We'll do some Preds in hour number 3. Coming up next, there is one way for the Titans to improve their draft stock, and we will get into that coming up next. Draft stock of capital for the Titans draft. We'll get into it coming up next. Jake Lyman, Parker Kelly, next man up, 102.5 The Game. Next man up, 102.5 The Game. Jake Lyman, Parker Kelly with you. Been a fun show to start this Monday morning. We'll talk some Preds coming up in hour number 3, but looking at the Titans with just over 3 weeks to go until the NFL draft, Matt Miller of ESPN released a 7-round mock draft and some interesting things for the Titans. Jeremiah Love goes at number 4 with David Bailey still on the board. Bailey ended up going 8th to the Saints. And the second round pick is the one that I have a bigger issue with. He has the Titans taking Chase Besantis, a guard out of Texas A&M. And I made the comment of, I don't think that elevates the ceiling of the team. Alex from Montreal asks, are you saying Love wouldn't elevate the ceiling of the team? No, I was saying taking the guard in the second round. When you've neglected edge and wide receiver really for a long time in the draft, with the exception of Traylon Burks, but with Burks, you took him as a replacement for A.J. Brown. So it was a net zero in terms of what you were bringing in. You lost a great wide receiver. You thought maybe you could replace him. Obviously, it didn't turn out that way. I wouldn't really even count that as using a first-round pick on a wide receiver because you traded one away to get him. So outside of Burks and A.J. Brown, when's the last time the Titans took a wide receiver in the first 3 rounds? Would it be like the Corey Davis, Taywan Taylor draft? Like, that's
what I think.
Is that as far back as you have to go to the last time the Titans picked a wide receiver on day 1 or 2?
Yeah, I think you're right.
Because like DK obviously was borderline. They took him first pick of the 4th round last year, but they have not spent premium draft capital at wide receiver. Edge rusher, me and TD say it ad nauseum. You haven't picked a first-round pass rusher since Derek Morgan. Derek Morgan. It's been such a long time. You've got 2 picks in the top 35. And if you're going to use number 4 on Jeremiah Love because you think he is the best player, and I can get behind it because he's a playmaker. He does more than just run the ball. He's going to be a safety valve for Cam Ward. He's immediately going to help that offense. Fine. If you want to take Love at 4, go ahead. But I think you have to go edge at either 35 or 66 after that because you are so desperate for solid young players at that position. That's why I would go Bailey over Love at 4. I think I'd go Love over the other options there. But you've neglected those positions with high-end draft capital for years. And if you're going to take a running back at 4, that's okay, but you can't put yourself in a position where you have to take a guard then at 35, right? Like that's the thing with Mike Borgonzi here is if you're going to take Love at 4, you've got to be able to address the premium positions on day 2. And I just don't see them going guard. I would rather go get a veteran piece. Heck, I would rather start Cordell Volson at right guard than draft one at 35 when you have talented edge players and wide receivers on the board still. I would rather stick with what they have now than using the 35th pick on a right guard.
I still think they're, again, because of NIL and transfer portal, it's kind of clumped all of this talent together in the 2nd through 4th round. So you just compare the 2 prospects. Like, still, I think you do have to go edge rusher. If you're not going to use it with the 4th overall pick with Jeremiah Love, at least use it with the 2nd over, because there are guys, way down in this draft, like Alex Harkey at Oregon. Like, I think you can maybe get him in the 5th round. So it's just guard. There are a lot of needs for this team, obviously, as we've said many times, but when you're looking at the premium position and getting those elite football players, I think there are elite football players at edge rusher that you could get in the 2nd round.
Yeah, and it's supposed to be a deep class there through day 2. And by going guard at 35, which I know if you're one of these mock draft analysts, and I don't want to, like, Matt Miller isn't a Titans fan, so he's not covering the Titans every single day. He doesn't know exactly what this roster looks like. He just looks and says, okay, you got Sloatman, Slater, and Volson as your options at center and right guard. They need a player there. I view it as you have neglected these premium positions in the draft for so long. You have to be able to spend those 2 picks on wide receiver, edge, cornerback. I'm looking back through the Titans draft history. You took Femi last year on the edge in the second round. But outside of that, you have to go all the way back to 2022 to find the last time they used a day 1 or 2 pick, we'll say a top 100 pick on a wide receiver and edge rusher. And that was Treylon Burks, which again, I don't think really counts because you were trading one wide receiver for another and ended up getting worse. Then you have to go back another 3 years to 2019 when they took Jeffrey Simmons and A.J. Brown at 2. Simmons, obviously, defensive tackle. Then Harold Landry in the second round in 2018, obviously was a very good player. Corey Davis and Taywan Taylor in 2017. And then like Kevin Dodd in 2016. That is the investment that you have made at
the year before that, Dorial Green Beckham at wide receiver
so
in 2015 in the second round.
In the last decade, that is all the investment you've done at edge and wide receiver, which are two of the most important positions on a football team, especially in this era of football where the quarterback is so important. Yes, quarterback, number one position that is always going to be the most important in terms of positional value. But you could argue that like wide receiver, edge, and tackle are all the next three because it's about helping your quarterback, protecting your quarterback, and affecting the other team's quarterback. So yeah, you've spent a lot of picks on tackles over the last few years. Isaiah Wilson and Dylan Radence and Nicholas Petit-Frere. Peter Skoronski obviously has become a guard. J.C. Latham. Like you've spent a ton of picks on offensive line. Most of them haven't worked out, but you have not even tried to address wide receiver and edge outside of a couple picks here and there. If you're going to go love at 4, great. I can get behind it. You can't take a guard at 35. But anyway, I did want to get to the Will Levis question here, which Will Levis is an important piece on the chessboard for Mike Borgonzi coming up over the next couple of weeks because the Titans don't have a lot of ways to add more picks unless you're trading down, right? Like at 4, if you traded down, you could pick up a couple more top 100 picks. Maybe if you trade down from 35, you get another third-round pick. But Will Levis is that extra chess piece that you have that you can use to either add a pick or improve one of your picks. Parker, I wanted to get your thoughts. Like, what would you rather have for Will Levis? I think it's going to be a draft day trade, either Friday or Saturday. Would you rather a clean pick? Let's say it's a 5th-round pick from the Rams, like we've been talking about when we do our simulations. Would you rather a clean 5th-round pick at like 155, or would you rather use Will Levis to maybe move up from 101 to 85 and get back into day 3 to go after one of these players at these premium positions that we've been talking about?
Yeah, it depends because I just don't know the trade details, but I've always been in favor of just getting a clean pick for it. You know, getting rid of Will Levis and getting a 5th round in return. I think that's certainly reasonable for a team like the Rams or maybe even the 49ers as well. I think you could get a 5th-round pick for Levis, and I would be in favor of that.
I struggle with it because I agree with you that I hate pick swaps because it's like you're adding value, but it doesn't feel like a ton of value because you're not getting another player out of it. And the Titans need lots of players. You need more throws at the dartboard. But I do think the way this draft is formatted, where, like you said, the players from 45 to 75 are all kind of in the same tier. You're getting a starting level player. I do think in this situation, if you could use Will Levis as a trade up chip to move up from 101 and get back into the top 80 or something like that, I think that could be really valuable. Give yourself 4 of those top 80 picks instead of 3 and then having to wait around for day 3, where I think there may be a little bit of a drop off from the type of player you're getting in the middle of the 3rd round rather at the top of the 4th.
Yeah, no, I agree. Get that picks, or not the pick swap. Get a clean 5th-round pick, and I still think I think it's Daniel Jeremiah who's talked about this, but I think the same still applies for early day 3. There's a lot of value there. Now, picks 40 through 75, I think is what he was saying was you're getting about the same caliber of player regardless of position.
Yeah.
But I still think there's value there because you look at what the Titans were able to do in the 4th round last year, getting all 3 of those pass catchers. Even the 5th round, I still think there's value there. So if you're able to get a 5th round for Levis, I think that would be a very beneficial move.
That's a fair point, and that's what Adam in Portland says too. He says if it's John Robinson, you do the pick swap, but Borgonzi has done well with these late picks so far, so he would just say get the pick. That'll be one of the storylines to watch for the Titans entering day 2 and into day 3 of the draft is when does the Will Levis trade happen? The signing of Mitch Trubisky makes it a when, not an if for the young quarterback. Adam in Portland also has a very interesting question. We can get to that coming up next to wrap up hour number 2. We'll keep talking Titans, and then we'll get into the Preds at the top of the hour. Preds with a tough weekend, losing to Montreal, and then yesterday in Tampa. Now they head on a long West Coast road trip to try and keep their playoff hopes alive. We'll get into that at 11, but more Titans talk coming up next. Jake Lyman, Parker Kelly, next man up, 102.5 The Game. Next man up, 1025, The Game. Jake Lyman, Parker Kelly, wrapping up hour number 2 on this Monday morning. We will talk some Preds coming up at 11, but draft month is almost here. We are just over 3 weeks away from the NFL draft in Pittsburgh. The Titans holding the 4th overall pick along with number 35 and 66. And we're going through some scenarios for the Titans after Matt Miller dropped a new 7-round mock draft on ESPN this morning. And Adam in Portland texted in what I think is a very interesting scenario and maybe my favorite scenario for the Titans. If someone wanted to jump you to get Jeremiah Love and you could pick up an additional 2nd-round pick and still be able to draft Ruben Bain, would you sign up for that? 100%. I've said it for months now. Titans trading back is the best scenario, but you need a partner to do so, obviously. I just don't think there's a huge difference in the player you're getting at 4 versus 11 or 12. Like, there are very good players in this draft. It is not a bad draft, like I've heard some people say. There just isn't the can't-miss surefire guys in the top 5, which is, it's a disappointing time to have a top 5 pick when that's what you want at number 4. You want a surefire, can't-miss guy. And I do think Jeremiah Love might be one of the closest things to it in this draft. But if you're not sold on taking him at 4 and somebody is willing to come up, getting extra value and moving back, I still think you're getting a very similar type of player at 8 or 9 or 10 or 11 or 12, wherever you are. If you get Sonny Styles, I would love it at 10. I don't know if I love it at 4, where you're not getting that extra value of the pick. Same thing with Ruben Bain. I think Ruben Bain's going to be a good player. I just think picking him at 4 and not getting any extra value for it is a huge risk that you're taking based on what we know about pass rushers with that lack of length that he has. So I would love to trade back from 4. I don't know if anybody's going to be willing to give up the type of draft capital you would want to move back. Right? Like, there's no quarterback who's going to be there at 4 unless it's Simpson. But I don't think somebody's trading up to 4 to get Simpson. So I'll be interested to see if there's any partners, if anybody's trying to move up in front of the Giants, whether it's for Love or Caleb Downs or Sonny Styles. But the type of draft capital you're going to get may not match what you're looking for to move out of the top 5. What you would typically get in a given year to move back from 4, I don't know if you're going to get that this year, given the class that we have.
Yeah, that's the thing. Because typically you see a lot more trade back options when there's a lot of these quarterbacks that are in the first round. This year it's Fernando Mendoza, and then Matt Miller has Ty Simpson going the first pick of day 2. So we don't even know if he's going to be a first round pick. With Jeremiah Love, you thought that there might be a trade back option with the Chiefs, but they went and they signed Kenneth Walker. So the only team that I see being willing to take a running back, at least in the top 10, is Washington at 7. So I don't know if there's going to, that's the thing, because we could say, oh, trade back, Titans need to trade back. Well, there has to be a dance partner,
right?
And we don't know if there is going to be one or not. And to be honest, I don't know if there will be. Plus, I got to see the offer. So I think you hit the nail on the head. 1, we don't even know if there's going to be a trade back option, and 2, are they willing to give you as much draft capital as you're looking for? We don't know that either.
Exactly. My favorite scenario is trading back. If you can trade back and feel like you're getting good value to move a few spots deeper into the top 10, maybe just on the outside of the top 10, you're still going to get a really good player. And I just don't think the gap is all that big between what you're getting at 4 and what you're getting at 11 or whatever it is. And you're going to get more of those top 100 picks that you've been coveting. But if you say that, like if the Titans are saying that, hey, we've got a group of guys that we really like. If we get this guy at 4 or this guy at 10, we don't feel all that differently about it. Guess what? Most of the league probably has very similar grades on these guys. And that's why you may not see somebody want to trade up and give up draft capital to come up, because they could say the same thing. If the Dolphins are picking at 11, and the Dolphins may be a bad example because I don't know if they're going to be willing to trade much at all to move up. Let's say it's the Cowboys at 12. The Cowboys at 12 might say, Yeah, we really like Jeremiah Love, but we think that Mekhi Lemon's going to fall to us at 12, and we really like him too. Like I don't think that there's going to be a player who teams covet enough to move up. So my favorite scenario, I just think it's unlikely. Trevor on the text line asked, "What's more likely, a trade back in the first or the second?" And I think it's the second. I I think you might be in a similar situation in the second round of there's a cluster of players that you like similarly, whether that's at wide receiver or edge, or if there's a corner in there. So I do think the Titans could end up finding a trade partner in the second round, pick up another third, similarly to what they did with the pick that ended up being Femi and Kevin Winston last year. But I also wouldn't hate sticking at 35 because that would mean that there's probably a guy there that they thought should have gone in the first round and ends up being a guy that you can build around early in the second round. I would love to trade back in the first. I just, again, you need a dance partner, and I just don't know if there's a player that other teams are going to covet enough to come up and give you moving up 5 or 6 spots in the first round, especially in the top 10, is probably going to cost you at least a second and probably another pick. I think teams might be content to just stay where they are and get this group of players that all kind of ends up muddled together. No one's standing out enough to trade up. So I'd love it. I don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah, and I see the Commanders because they do have a lot of running backs in the room already. So
Yeah, they signed Rashad White.
yeah,
They signed Jerome Ford. They've got the McWeapon back. They've got Bill,
Ja'Cory
Ja'Cory
Merritt.
Krosky Merritt. Yeah,
Brian Robbins. Well, I guess he was a 49er last year. He just signed with somebody.
he did. He signed with the Falcons
right.
because it's a play-by-play broadcaster's nightmare of having two B. Robinsons on the same team in the same backfield. So
I see them going defense. That's what I was trying to say. I see the Commanders going defense. So I just don't think there's going to be the trade back.
Yeah.
This dream that every Titans fan has of if there's a trade back option, I just don't think it's going to play out how you think, if there is one at all.
Yeah, and we won't know until draft night. These things appear out of thin air sometimes. So maybe Mike Borgonzi does have somebody who wants to jump the Giants. I would think if somebody jumps the Giants, it's for Caleb Downs, because there's a lot of smoke around that right now. Harbaugh loves having an elite safety. I mean, you go back to the early days of Harbaugh where Ed Reed was still there. And of course, the last few years you've had Kyle Hamilton. He loves having a safety on that defense. And Caleb Downs, as John Harbaugh said, could be a future Hall of Famer at safety. So maybe that's where somebody would value it and say, hey, we want to move up and go get Caleb Downs in front of the Giants. I just, again, don't think it's going to be in the cards, at least as we sit here on March 30th. 615-737-1025. Going to be plenty of draft talk over the next 3+ weeks as we gear up for April 23rd in Pittsburgh. We'll have Nick Frazier on tomorrow. We'll get into some more draft talk with him on Tuesday. But coming up next, let's talk Preds. Tough weekend for Nashville after it looked like they were starting to get into the driver's seat, a little bit of cruise control on their playoff hopes after a great week against Western Conference teams. They sputter against the East, losing 3 straight against the Devils, the Canadians, and the Lightning. Now they turn their attention west for a huge road trip, the final road trip of the regular season. We'll talk Predators to start off hour number 3. Jake Lyman, Parker Kelly, next man up, 102.5 The Game. Next man up, 1025, the game final hour on this Monday. Jake Lyman, Parker Kelly, broadcasting live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville Studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. Let's talk some Preds here to start off hour number 3. Been a tough weekend for Nashville. 3 straight losses at home against New Jersey and Montreal. And then yesterday, back end of a back-to-back, fell 3-2 on the road against Tampa. Now, Montreal and Tampa, those are both playoff teams. And you didn't play well, but those were games that I think you look at and you say, you're probably not the better team on the ice for those games. And the Predators, if you want a bright side of the last couple of days, I would rather lose those 3 games against Eastern Conference teams than lose the next 3 games. So hopefully the Preds can get things figured out over the next couple of days. It's nice they get a little bit of a rest here, off until Thursday night when they'll take on Los Angeles. 9:30 p.m. puck drop out there in LA. So it is a caffeine special. In fact, 4 straight caffeine specials for the Preds on this 5-game road trip at LA, at San Jose, at LA again, at Anaheim, and then they'll wrap up on the road in Salt Lake City against Utah. That one, a mercifully 8 p.m. puck drop. But you weren't going to win your last, 16 games of the season. They had won 5 in a row heading into this 3-game losing streak. It wasn't going to be all sunshine and roses the entire way to the finish line. The Preds were going to have a speed bump, a pothole somewhere along the way as they try and get their way into the playoffs. And the good news is you still hold on to your spot as the wild card 2 as it sits right now. Now, you have games in hand against everybody you're competing against. You have 77 points in 74 games. LA is 1 point back. They have 1 game in hand. Seattle is 2 points back. They have 2 games in hand. And then you look a little further down, San Jose has 3 games in hand, and they are only 4 points back. So it's not going to be easy. The Preds have definitely hurt their playoff chances over the last few days, but you do have an opportunity to control your own destiny over the next week where you play, I would say, the 2 teams that I am most threatened by when you look at the battle for this final wild card spot. It's the Kings, it's the Sharks. You get a chance to play those 2 teams 2 times against LA, 1 time against San Jose, and you can really start to add some cushion again, but you also could fall right back out of it. This next week is going to be massive, as all of the weeks remaining leading up to the end of the regular season are going to be for the Predators if they're going to reach the playoffs.
Look, we did give Frazier a little bit of a semi-victory lap last time that he was in here because the Preds were, at that time, I believe, 3 points ahead of the Kings in that final wild card spot. And Max came on here, I believe it was on Thursday or Friday, and said that there's just no way that the Preds were going to win out. And, he was obviously right about that. But what I've worried about a long time and why I said I don't think the Preds will make the playoffs is because they get hot and they give you hope. And this time the hope was very real because they had such a big gap between them and the Kings, but that has since shrunken to 1 point. But you're on a 3-game losing streak, and I cannot figure this team out because they go on these runs and then they have these meltdowns, this 3-game losing streak. So now you're going on the road for a 6-game road stretch here. And this is where rubber meets the road.
Yeah, and I think there are things that you can say that would make you feel good about the situation. Like, hey, you lost 3 in a row and you're still in a playoff spot. Shows you how important that 5-game winning streak was, especially with the Pacific Division just melting down around you. The Kings and the Kraken and the Sharks just losing left and right. You knew that things were going to balance out eventually. It wasn't going to be a complete and utter downfall for all of those teams, and the Preds weren't going to ascend and become an immediate Stanley Cup contender. So the good news is you've lost 3 straight and you're still in a playoff spot as it stands right now. The bad news is because you have these games in hand, you don't really control your own destiny the rest of the way. These head-to-head 4-point games do help you because if you can take care of business against the Kings and the Sharks, who you play twice each the rest of the way, that's going to help you for sure. But The Kraken have 2 games in hand against you. The Jets have a game in hand. So you've only got 8 games left to go to accumulate these points, and the next 5 of them are on the road. You're right. We don't really know what this Preds team is. Every time we think we have a read on it, they flip it back on its head. Every time you're like, all right, well, the season's over. The Preds aren't going to make the playoffs. They make the run, and they stay right in it. And then they fall apart again. You're like, all right, it's over. So which way is the coin going to flip for the next week and a half as you go on this 5-game road trip? Because I could see it completely bottoming out. You're going on the road against good teams. Like, yeah, you're not playing world beaters for the most part on this 5-game road trip. None of these teams are true Stanley Cup contenders, but they're all good, and they all have a lot to play for in LA and San Jose and Anaheim and Utah. So can you prove that you are worthy of that spot over these teams? That's what the next week and a half leading up to the return home for the final 3 games of the regular season, it's going to show us what this team is moving forward. And I really don't know what to expect at this point. I didn't think they were going to lose all 3 of these games over the weekend, and you'd feel a lot better if you could have even gotten an extra point here or there. But this team is still in the conversation. They've got to start playing their best hockey right now because these next 3, 4, 5 games are going to decide their season.
Yeah, and you have 2 against the Kings, both on the road in a 4-day span. You have San Jose in there, you have Utah in there. Both teams are in the hunt. They're not, in contention, but they're still at least in the hunt. So those will all be fairly difficult because they're on the road, and then you close with Minnesota, San Jose, and Anaheim at home. So not an easy, final 9 games for the Preds, and 6 of those are on the road. The good thing is you get to close out with 3 at home. And the Preds have had, for the most part, that home ice advantage, and it's, Bridgestone's rocking. But man, it is these next 6 and I feel like we say this all the time. These next 6 games are going to be very telling.
Well, and it's funny because I felt like we were finally getting out of that of like let's see what happens this week. And then they lose 3 games in a row. I thought we were starting to feel pretty good about their chances to make the playoffs. And then, you hit a little skid. And the rest of the schedule is very interesting because you don't play any teams the rest of the way that I look at and say, well, that's a win. Right? None of the teams that you play have less than 73 points. I think that's the lowest is the Sharks at 73. You're at 77. But also, you don't play anybody outside of the Wild with more than 86 points. So you're playing everybody who's just lumped into this same group as you. Can you be just a cut above those teams? Because that's what you're going to have to be if you want to claim that final wild card spot. Sadly, I think the wild card 1 hopes may have gone out the window. It's not impossible, but making up 5 points on the Mammoth in the final 8 games doesn't seem super likely. So that was what we were talking about last week is, all right, now they feel good about the playoffs. Can they get to wild card 1? I think now it's wild card 2 or bust for the Preds if they're going to sneak into the tournament this season. 615-737-1025 is the phone number. You can text or call. Our phone lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. We'll get to some of your texts. We'll also talk about the long-term outlook for the Predators, depending on how this season ends up. How does it change the way you look at this squad moving forward with what we've seen from some of the young guys and also the veterans? Is this a team that you feel can compete next year? We'll get into it next. 615-737-1025. Our phone line's driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Jake Lyman, Parker Kelly, next man up, 1025 The Game. Next man up, 1025, The Game. Jake Lyman, Parker Kelly. With you for a few more segments on your Monday morning. Chase and Big Joe are coming up at noon. We're talking Preds. Tough weekend for Nashville. After winning 5 in a row, now 3 straight losses for the Predators, and still holding on by a thread to wild card 2, having a 1-point advantage over the LA Kings, 2 points up on Seattle, 3 on Winnipeg, and 4 on San Jose. St. Louis, not completely out of it yet, but those are the teams battling, 5 teams basically. It concludes St. Louis, 6 teams for 1 spot in the Western Conference. Preds currently holding that last spot, but again, they've got games in hand on all of those teams chasing them. So going to need some help down the stretch, going to have to win their games head-to-head against the Kings and Sharks coming up this week, starting on Thursday out in LA. Let's get to some texts on the Predators. 615-737-1025 is the phone number if you want to join the conversation. Justin in Greenbrier says, how I feel about the Preds every year. It's a gif of why do we have to cut these things so damn close? It's true. With the exception of last year, the Predators have really just been trying to claw their way into the playoffs 3 of the last 4 years. Now, 4 years ago, you came up just a little bit short with that young team after the big trade deadline moves from David Poile in his final year. Then the year after that, the long point streak led you into the playoffs and you lose to Vancouver. Last year was obviously a down year with the 3rd worst record in the NHL, but it does feel like the Predators are just always right on the cusp of the playoffs. Can they get their way in is going to be the question. And I know all of the games count. And these 3 losses are disappointing because you wanted to bank points. But again, the Eastern Conference ones you can live with because it's not helping anybody catapult back ahead of you in this race. You can't say that about these next 3 games at LA, at San Jose, and right back to LA from Thursday to Monday. That might decide your season right there. If you get 4 points, I think you're in a really good spot. Let's say you beat LA once, you beat San Jose once, and you lose the second one to LA. I think you're in a good spot and you're still fighting down the stretch. But if you only get 2 points out of the 6 in those 3 games, I think you're in some big trouble. So those 3 games, I think, are going to decide the Predator season.
Yeah, because it's so congested right there, right? You have the Preds with 77, the Kings with 76, Seattle with 75, Winnipeg, San Jose 74, 73, and even St. Louis has 73. They're probably not going to make it, but at least they're still in the hunt.
Yeah.
So you just have that cluster of teams. So you got to come away, and I know I'm stating the obvious here, with as many points as possible. Don't want to leave any doubt, but yeah, I think you're right. Those next 3 games with LA, San Jose, back to LA, we're going to have a really good read after those 3 games are over.
Well, it is funny looking at the 2 conferences, and this just happens in all of sports, that sometimes there's just a difference in the talent level conference to conference. For the NBA, for years, it was the West is this gauntlet, and then LeBron James just, dances right through to the finals every year in the East. And the Central Division is loaded with Colorado and Dallas and Minnesota, but it's hilarious looking at these 6 teams with 73 to 77 points battling for a playoff spot, where the Toronto Maple Leafs are 13 points out of a playoff spot. They would be 2 points back in the West. The Devils, who the Preds just lost to on Thursday night, they would be in the playoffs in the West. They're 10 points out of a spot in the East. It's just funny how it works sometimes like that. But the Predators have some work to do. Again, they are in wild card 2 right now. May not last until they take the ice again on Thursday in LA to start off that 5-game West Coast road swing. Adam in Portland says, we just have to get in the mindset that we are already in the playoffs right now. This is a first 4 type of playoff series with the Kings and Sharks being our opponent. If we can't beat them, we don't deserve to be in the actual playoffs. And that's true. I think you do get some of these teams that are battling down the stretch. You have to be able to get into a playoff mindset early, right? Like you are playing for your life now. It is win or go home. And I want to see if the Preds can get into that mindset now. I like the little bit of time off here for the Preds to reset. You were playing really well. You hit the speed bump. 3 straight losses. Can you reset for what are probably the 3 most important games of your season coming up in succession, all on the road, and go get points? And Gover makes a really good point on the text line. It's more than just getting the 4 points. They can't allow LA or San Jose to get a point at all. The 4 points must come in regulation. That's a great point, too. We talk about these 4-point games. Well, it's not a 4-point game if you win in overtime. It's only a 2-point game at that point. So you need to win, and you need to win in regulation at least one of these games. Like, overtime is fine because you at least minimize the damage if you do lose. At that point, they're not getting the 4-point boost against you, but winning in regulation is going to be absolutely crucial this week for the Predators. And I do wonder for Nashville Predators fans in general, like, how are you going to come out of this year feeling about the team, whether they make the playoffs or not? What is the long-term outlook for this squad? I know that the new GM is going to play a big role in that. Whoever they bring in to be the successor for Barry Trotz is going to have their own ideas of what the construction of this roster needs to look like. But no matter what happens, if the Preds get into the playoffs, if they don't get into the playoffs, next year is going to be a little bit strange because you still have these aging veterans on these big contracts. As we talked about last year, the overall construction of your roster isn't going to change a ton, especially at the top, because Stamkos is still under contract, Marchessault is still under contract, of course, Forsberg and Yossi and Shea and Haig and all these guys and Saros and Net. You're going to have a pretty similar looking team. It's going to be about the development of the young pieces on this team moving forward. And Matthew Wood, we've seen a lot from. I really like what we've seen from Ryan Ufko. And next year, you're going to add to that. Do we see Brady Martin make the team out of camp again? He made it this year, and they sent him back to juniors, but does he end up being an actual fixture on this team next season? Same with Tanner Molendijk. People thought that he might make the team this year. He didn't. He spent the year in the AHL. Could he end up being a legitimate player for you on the blue line? I think that is going to be the big story for the Predators this offseason, similar to last year, of you're not going to be able to change the top end of your roster all that much with all of the money you have invested in these aging players. Can you get the young guys to take that big jump? Some of them have. Luke Evangelista has been much better this year than he was last year. And again, you're seeing Wood and Ufko and even a little bit from Svechkov and Schaefer as they've tried to rebound, Svechkov especially after a slow start to this season. That's going to be the difference between the Preds continuing to be this will they, won't they playoff team or being an actual playoff contender next year. Do the young guys take that next step over this offseason?
Yeah, that's kind of when we're having this conversation about, we're trying to get a good read on this Preds team. You look at the roster construction and that all these young guys that, for the most part, I think it's safe to say you feel confident in going forward, but can they take that next step? And then you have a lot of these older veterans as well. So, that's just tough for me to get a read on how the roster is set up and what this team will look like going forward.
Whoever the new GM is going to have a lot of questions to answer about not just the short term, not just the 2026-27 edition of the Predators, but what the next 5 years look like for this team with a lot of young talent coming through the pipeline. But will they be able to match it up with the timelines they have right now on the roster? Going to be very interesting this offseason. 615-737-1025 is the phone number. If you have any thoughts, you can text or call us at 615-737-1025. Our phone line's driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. We got about 30 more minutes left with you on this Reaction Monday. We'll get back into basketball when we come back. The Final Four is set. Dan Hurley and his UConn Huskies with the shot of the year yesterday to beat Duke. Where does Dan Hurley rank among current college basketball coaches with 3 Final Fours in 4 years and chasing a 3rd national championship in 4 years? We'll talk about it next. Preview those matchups and much more. Jake Lyman, Parker Kelly, next man up here on 102.5 The Game. Next man up, 102.5 The Game. Jake Lyman, Parker Kelly with you for 30 more minutes on your Monday morning. Chase and Big Joe are coming up at the top of the hour. Reacting to the Elite Eight over the weekend. Kind of a disappointing one up until UConn made the comeback and the shot yesterday to move on, beat Duke 73-72. And Dan Hurley goes to the Final Four with his UConn Huskies for the third time in 4 years, which made me ask the question, is Dan Hurley the best coach in college basketball right now? And I think the answer has to be yes. Right, Parker?
I don't know. I mean, you just think about the coaches that have won a national championship. Golden is certainly going to be in the mix.
Right.
Izzo has one, Self has one, but they've, their teams have, it's been a while. Izzo hasn't won a national championship since 2000, and Bill Self's teams have struggled tremendously. I don't think they've made it past the first weekend in the last 4 years. No, I think it is Hurley.
That it's tough because you talk about the guys like Izzo and Self and even like Calipari. Like those guys are institutions in college basketball with historical success. But when you're talking about right now, like if you had to go win a basketball game right now and pick your coach, I don't know how it could be anybody but Dan Hurley with what he's been able to do at UConn over the past half decade. Winning back-to-back national championships, already tough to do. Then being able to retool and get back to a Final Four 2 years later, really, really impressive from Dan Hurley. Although the dramatics, the over-the-top on the sideline is always something that's going to come along with Dan Hurley too. I was talking to you during the break, Parker. Little bit surprised that he got in the face of Roger Ayers after that shot. Still with time on the clock, by the way. Right? Like if the buzzer sounds and it's 000s and you won the game and you want to go talk to Roger Ayers and get in his face, that's fine. I don't think I'd love my coach doing that the way he did it, of literally being like eyebrow to eyebrow with Roger Ayers, but do not do it with the time on the clock. Roger Ayers is one of the few referees that I think lets that thing go and isn't going to insert himself into the story of that game. But I'm sure there are officials out there that if Dan Hurley did that to them with his jacket falling off his shoulder and goes eyeball to eyeball with you, they'd tee you up and send Duke to the free throw line to go take the lead. I mean, you have to talk about that when you talk about Dan Hurley, but you also can't deny that he is doing things at a different level across college basketball right now.
And we all know Dan Hurley's a psychopath, and I love it. But at the same time, you would have thought that he would have known better to wait until the end of regulation, because there was 0.9
there was
seconds?
I think it was 0.3 was what they had. I think they adjusted it a little bit.
Right. So it's so funny because with Dan Hurley, I don't know whether to congratulate him, be happy for him, or try to call the cops, when you're watching him, because I love it though. Dan Hurley's awesome.
I mean, his brother's going to join his staff, right? Bobby, I
wouldn't be surprised.
Unless he can get another head coaching job. Like
he might be able to go to like the mid majors,
right? He might be able to, but
is actually what I think is going to happen.
After some success at Arizona State, it didn't pan out. Maybe he does want to stay as a head coach, but God, prayers up to all of the referees in the Big East next year. If you've got Danny and Bobby Hurley on the same sideline berating you for 40 minutes straight. But again, it's one of those things that has to be talked about. Dan Hurley is going to let the refs have it. I mean, trying to hand the official his glasses and then asking if he's ever heard of LASIK is, I mean, did you see that?
Actually, no, I didn't.
I think it was the Sweet 16 game against Michigan State. He, during a timeout, walks up and offers his glasses to the official. And he's like, oh, you don't need them? Have you ever heard of the LASIK, whatever? You can read his lips. I mean, I don't know how he gets away with some of this stuff. But again, you can't deny that he is an elite coach who now is in his third Final Four in 4 years. And because of the way the bracket has worked itself, he has got a shot to win another national championship. Now, if I had to guess, I think the winner of Arizona and Michigan is going to win the national title. I think those are your two best teams. We said this off the top of the show. That might be your de facto national championship game, is Arizona and Michigan. But they play the game for a reason. they're still going to play that national championship game a week from today up there in Indianapolis. And because of the way the bracket worked out, that UConn draws Illinois in the national semifinals instead of having to go through an Arizona and a Michigan to get to the national championship, UConn's got a chance at this thing. They do. And if you win 3 out of 4, that not only makes you the best coach right now, but it puts Dan Hurley in a historic tier of college basketball coaches.
Absolutely. Winning back-to-back is not a small feat whatsoever. And, like you said, had to retool, and then he's back at this point in time. And I was talking to you during the break. Illinois is actually a slight favorite in this one.
Which shocked me.
Which, if I was an odds maker, you would think it would be the other way around. Illinois is a 2.5-point favorite right now. I thought UConn would have at least been a 1.5-point favorite. So if UConn wins this game and goes to the national title for the third time in 4 years, it's no debate. Dan Hurley's the greatest coach in the sport.
Yeah, I am surprised that Illinois is favored. 2.5. That's the early game on Saturday, just shortly after 5 p.m. tip. And then Michigan is a 1.5-point favorite in the late game. I really do think we're going to get really good basketball games. Again, I think Michigan and Arizona are a tier above the other two teams, but I do think we got really good matchups. The tournament in general has been fun this year. The Elite Eight was underwhelming up until that UConn Duke second half. The Sweet 16 in general was fine. Like the games to start off on Thursday were great. Like literally simultaneously, Texas and Purdue and Iowa, Nebraska coming down the stretch was just some high level basketball being
my
played.
Heart could barely take all that.
That was fun. And then St. John's Duke on Friday evening did not have the crazy finish that we saw yesterday in Duke UConn, but maybe one of the best played basketball games of the tournament. Like that was two really good teams going blow for blow down the stretch, and Duke was able to pull it out. And then UConn Michigan State was a good game too, even though it was lower scoring. I think overall the tournament was solid, but that UConn Duke game gave us the signature moment that we've been looking for. There's been a couple of big shots in this tournament. Otega Owe, the 3 to tie it against Santa Clara. Tyler Tanner, the shot going halfway down and coming back out against Nebraska. But we've got the signature moment, the onions moment from Bill Raftery yesterday. I'm excited.
Almost lost the poor guy yesterday.
Him and Grant Hill's reaction, and Grant Hill's reaction may have been out of terror for his Duke Blue Devils, but like they looked like they just saw a ghost when that shot went down. Double order of onions in that one for UConn to get the win, and I'm excited. I think the Final Four is setting up to be really entertaining this year. Again, UConn, Illinois, I don't think they're as good as Michigan and Arizona, but I do think that's a evenly matched game, and we're going to see a lot of talent on the floor. So going to be fun up there in Indianapolis. I will mention the women's tournament continues tonight with 2 more Elite Eight games. And overall, the women's tournament has been very underwhelming in terms of the elite games going back and forth. At least in the Elite Eight, we got blowouts yesterday. UConn won by 18. Duke was in that game for a little bit, but ended up losing by 12. Saturday was really bad. Nobody really even all that competitive, especially against the 1 seeds. The Vandy Notre Dame game, as disappointing as it was entertaining down the stretch. Vandy got 2 good shots to tie it at the buzzer and send it to overtime, but caps off a really fun season over there for Shea Ralph and company. The one game on the women's side that has just been electric was the Duke LSU game. Did you see the finish there, Parker?
Yeah, it took forever to get down the rim.
I've never seen it. I've never seen it. And I know Gino Auriemma, the head coach at UConn, was not happy about the way the rims are, like the brand new rims and the overinflated basketballs and how that's led to poor 3-point shooting. But man, that thing went all the way around twice before falling out. 2 spots already claimed in the Final Four on the women's side. UConn and UCLA, the top 2 teams in the bracket, winning their Elite Eight matchups tonight. 2 more today. You'll get Michigan and Texas, TCU and South Carolina. I hate to say it, but I think we're going to get all chalk. I think it's going to be all 4 1 seeds and the same 4 teams that were in the Final Four last year. So as much as the parity has improved in women's college basketball, there is still a tier above the rest with those 4 teams of UConn, UCLA, South Carolina, and Texas. And it looks like we'll have the same 4 teams in the Final Four, barring an upset by Michigan or TCU today.
Yeah, no, and didn't we get all 1 seeds in the Final Four last year for the women's tournament?
I actually don't think so. I think one of those teams was actually a 2 seed. I could be wrong.
But it's looking like it's going to be that case this year because
it was the same 4 teams.
Yeah.
So it was UConn, UCLA, Texas, South Carolina. Last year, UConn was actually a 2 seed. USC was the 1 seed in that region.
Yeah.
So
and that's when Juju Watkins had the injury, right?
Right. So it would be the same 4 teams, but this would be the 4 1 seeds. Last year, UConn was a 2, even though they ended up being the national champs.
And South Carolina is a 14.5-point favorite over TCU, and Michigan is a 10.5-point underdog to Texas.
It's
so it's going to be chalk.
That's what I'm saying is like the competitive level among these teams has gotten so much better. Like I think 5 through 20, there's so much more parity, but those top 4 teams have just been so tough to beat, especially UConn this year. And it looks like we might see that collision course, UConn, UCLA, who have been the 2 top teams across the country all season long. 615-737-1025. Going to be a fun weekend of basketball coming up next week with the men's Final Four in Indianapolis, the women's Final Four in Phoenix. We will wrap up the show on the other side with your thoughts on the Final Four, the matchups there. And also, baseball is underway. We've wrapped up the first weekend of the MLB season. I have some thoughts on the ABS challenge system because there was a lot of big moments from that. So we'll wrap up the show with that coming up next. Jake Lyman, Parker Kelly, next man up, 102.5 The Game. Final segment of the show on this Monday morning. Next man up, Jake Lyman, Parker Kelly with you here on 102.5. The Game. Chase and Big Joe are coming up at noon. Going to be a fun show as they react to all of the basketball over the weekend, hockey, much more. We will get to some of your calls here at the end of the show. Let's go to our phone lines now, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Kenny the mailman is called in. Kenny, thanks for calling. Good morning.
Good morning, good friend. Two things. One, I wanted to let you know I listened to you Friday on your radio call. And the first quarter of the Vandy Notre Dame game, I think that's time I'll never get back in my life. Because it got to the point where I was surprised if they got the ball past half court, and then I was surprised if they made a shot.
Yeah, it was a disappointing start to that game. Uncharacteristic turnovers, but at the very least, after the way they played in that first quarter, they were only down by 4, which I guess made you feel okay about it, given that they really couldn't get many shots off, a lot of turnovers, and even when they did get shots off, they weren't making many of them.
And I was surprised because on the radio, there was no crowd noise. It didn't seem like it was an amazing atmosphere. Do you think there was just not being in that moment much was hard?
Yeah, I think maybe there were some jitters off the bat, and Hannah Hidalgo and that Notre Dame team, they had been there last year, the ones who returned. So I think that might have played a little bit of a role there. But yeah, the atmosphere was okay in general. I think the UConn fans came in around halftime and made it a little bit better. But yeah, I think that stage, seeing it for the first time, might have led to a little bit of a slow start.
Yep, they'll be ready next year. And then your comment on the referees next year being nervous about calling Connecticut games if his brother joins it. Having 2 technicals in your pocket is an amazing weapon for the referee. I don't know why they take it. Call one on the jump ball, and I guarantee you will have 39 minutes of relatively peace, because the next one they're watching from in the dressing room.
Now it's a very good point of I do wish that officials, not that I want them to insert themselves into the game more, but like coaches do get away with more than they should talking to the officials. I think that you're right that you don't get ejected just from the first technical. If you use one early, I'm sure the talking will be a little bit less as things go along.
Yeah, we used to watch Patino when he was coach at Kentucky here at Vandy, and he put on a better show than most of the programs over at TPAC.
There's definitely some good ref shows. I mean, TV Teddy is up there with the best.
Yeah, y'all have a great day.
Thanks for the call, Kenny. Always great to hear from Kenny the mailman. Speaking of officials, the ABS challenge system has been instituted across Major League Baseball this year, and we had Jeff Hem on Thursday, and as somebody who'd been around the AAA game for years, and that's when they were testing out the challenge system in the ABS, he said that fans are going to love it, and I've already seen it. I don't know, Parker, if you saw the clips from the Reds-Red Sox game this weekend.
I haven't seen them, no.
So the challenge system was used on back-to-back pitches. C.B. Buckner was the umpire, who is notorious for being a bad home plate umpire. And it was Eugenio Suarez for the Reds, who was called out strike 3, taps his head, challenge comes in. He was right. It was off the plate. All right, he steps back in again. Another pitch comes in, called strike 3 again. Suarez taps the head. Again, it was out of the zone. He steps in again. And Buckner, you could tell, was very frustrated about being challenged on back-to-back pitches. But that's what's brilliant about the challenge system is the strategy that you use. These players have to know when to use it, because if you lose it before the 7th inning, you could have some big moments where you need it later on and it ends up costing you. But I thought that was awesome to see that some of these umpires, it's like, hey, Buckner missed 26 ball strike calls in his first game. That is abysmal in a game where you're getting probably 250. So you're missing about 10% of your calls during a game. It's horrible. And so that's why the challenge system was needed. I I'm interested to see how it adjusts throughout the season as these players get more comfortable with it, because some of the young players, they're used to it. They've been dealing with it in the minor leagues for the last couple of years, so it's nothing new to them. But some of the older players who have never had to do it, I think there is a little bit of a hesitation in the moment of, man, should I challenge this? And there was a moment in the Tigers-Padres game on Saturday where it was a 3-2 count. Pitch comes in. Spencer Torkelson gets rung up on strikes, and you could see the gears turning in his head, and he decided not to challenge it. And it would have loaded the bases. It was a 3-2 pitch. It's the first inning, but it's high leverage. I'm interested to see how the strategy continues with this challenge system as players get more used to it, because it is a huge tool for these teams to not have to just deal with umpires who are not very good at their job. Not all of them, but some of them are not very good at their job.
I talked to Jeff Francoeur, former Atlanta Brave, on Friday about the ABS thing, and asked him, like, do you like it? What's your opinion on it? And he said at first that he thought he wouldn't, but now it's kind of growing on him, just kind of seeing how it works. It seems like a fair compromise. We're not getting rid of the human umps, but the ability to be able to challenge calls, I think is certainly very fair. I've enjoyed seeing it. I think it's great for the sport.
No, I think it's exactly what the sport needed. You didn't completely get rid of the human element of umpires, which is important. You've got to be able to have that, and you have to have the framing ability of a catcher be part of the game, because that's what those guys are trained to do from the time they start putting on catcher's gear. Is you've got to be able to steal strikes. So that's still part of it, but you eliminate the big human error that could end up costing a team a game one way or the other. So I thought that was great. I'm glad baseball season is here. Speaking of my Detroit Tigers, Justin Verlander back on the mound in a Tigers uniform for the first time in almost a decade. So I'm excited for that today. But going to be a fun day of sports again. The Women's Elite Eight wraps up today. I will be intrigued to see if Michigan can keep it close with Texas. I don't think TCU is going to be able to keep up with South Carolina. South Carolina as a team is just too good. TCU, I think, yes, they've got more talent than a lot of teams, but I think it is a lot of Olivia Miles and Marta Suarez who have to do everything, and South Carolina is going to make it difficult on them. So Texas, Michigan, if you're looking for a game to watch tonight that might actually have some intrigue, I think that would be the one. But we'll have the Final Four set on both sides by the end of the night, and we will be looking ahead to Indianapolis in those matchups between UConn and Houston and Arizona, Michigan on Saturday. I can't wait. Going to be a fun week. Also, we haven't mentioned it, Parker, but owners' meetings are going on down in Arizona for the NFL this week. So sometimes you get some news coming out of there, whether that's rule changes, maybe you get some player movement. So that'll be something to keep an eye on moving forward, is the owners' meetings this week down there in Arizona. Maybe we get some news out of it.
Well, I just saw that Kyle Shanahan wasn't exactly thrilled with the fact that they're going to open their season in Melbourne, Australia. So yeah, and I know the McAfee show's there. All these different shows are there. So yeah, I'm sure we'll get some news and tidbits coming out of NFL owners meetings this week.
I did see Dan Campbell said this morning that they're considering moving Penei Sewell over to the left side of the line. That is an interesting note that I don't know how I would feel about that. Like, left tackle is obviously the more important position, but you need two good right tackles. Do you want to risk the all-pro that you have there just to flip him over to the left side? That's an interesting note, but we'll keep up with that and much more throughout the week. And of course, the Predators fighting for a playoff spot. Big one coming up on Thursday. Big weekend in general out there on the West Coast. 2 games against LA, 1 against San Jose over a 5-day span could end up deciding whether the Predators are a playoff team or not this season. So going to be a fun week here on the show. We will be back 9 a.m. tomorrow to react to everything that goes on today. More draft talk as the Titans look ahead to April 23rd out there in Pittsburgh. But that will do it for us. Again, back 9 a.m. tomorrow, but Chase and Big Joe are coming up next. Don't go anywhere. You're listening to 102.5 The Game.